Hi, Alan Stratton here from CostMatters.com. In my last two posts, I discussed powerful questions to find cost reduction or cost optimization opportunities at an activity and business process level. These questions focus attention on cost drivers, or the reasons why we do work and get current results. However, these questions are only one portion of the whole picture. They focus on the first stage of an activity-based cost, or ABC analysis. These questions alone are valuable, but coupled with the second stage of an activity-based cost analysis, they can yield even more profit opportunities. The second stage of an ABC analysis drives cost accumulated in activities to products or customers, or in some cases to other useful objects of interest. It is at this point that cost can be compared to revenue to determine an accurate profit. More on that later. Key to this analysis is using cause and effect relationships in driving activity costs to products or customers. Early in my career, I worked with several large manufacturing companies. Each used a traditional standard cost system. In each case, most of the company's overhead was allocated to products based on manufacturing direct labor. Now, for some time, overhead had been increasing while direct labor had been decreasing, primarily due to automation and offshoring operations. In these companies, these systems calculated three major components of product cost: material, labor, and overhead. Material costs received a lot of attention. Nearly the entire purchasing organization focused on finding lower material prices. In addition, much of engineering also focused on raw material costs. Consequently, material costs were usually very accurate. Another significant chunk of engineering and most of operation focused on direct labor, or number two. New automation opportunities were always welcome, and when implemented, these opportunities reduced labor but nearly always increased overhead. Once implemented, this overhead cost was usually just added to the overhead cost pool and allocated to all products based on the smaller labor basis. In some companies, it was difficult to keep labor routings up to date. These labor routings were the basis for all direct labor calculations. At times, a product manager would object to a high product cost of an unprofitable product. On cue, all of the industrial engineers would scramble to analyze labor routings for the product in question. They always managed to find something to correct that would reduce labor. Further, since overhead was allocated based on labor, overhead cost for that product would be reduced also. But this exercise reminds me of the arcade game Whack-A-Mole. In Whack-A-Mole, the objective is to smack all the moles back into their holes. However, as soon as you whack one, more pop up from the other holes. Occasionally, I can really whack one or two, but I can never get them all. Similarly, this labor routing scramble for cost reduction usually only served to push cost over to another product. Rarely did we see any real net profit impact. And the allocation relationship between labor and overhead essentially made labor and overhead vary together. Overhead is dependent on labor. This effectively reduced these three major categories to really only two: material and all else based on labor. Now, in contrast, with cost derived from activity-based cost analysis, overhead is traced to products individually from activities based on the consumption relationship between activities and products. Now, rather than only three cost categories, overhead is split out by each activity. Now, if a product cost is too high, each of these relationships can be analyzed and prioritized. Coupled with cost driver analysis, explained in the last two postings, gives product managers real ammunition to drive real improvements to bottom line business profits. With these better cost analysis tools, companies can be in better financial health and more robust to withstand tough business cycles. What are your experiences finding hidden money? Appreciate you sharing them below this post at costmatters.com. So when cost matters, profits soar. This is Alan Stratton from costmatters.com. Thank you.